Hi everyone, Tia here from Order of the Bookish. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a very exciting author interview, and I hope you guys learn so much, and I hope you discover this new amazing book that we're going to talk about. This is PJ. PJ has been a successful author for many years now. He was a bestseller in his home country, Brazil. He is an Emmy Award winner, and now he just launched his most recent book, The Girl From Wudang. And it is such an incredible story. So, PJ, please tell us a little bit about your inspiration because there's so much in this book that relates to your life. Can you tell us more about that?
So, first of all, hi, thanks for having me here. This book is actually a combination of a lot of different stories that I had been working on for a long time, and in particular, I remember about 8 years ago or so working on two different books and realizing that they're the same, that they actually work better. The holes that I had to fill in one lived in the other one, and which happens quite a lot with me is that I work in two different stories and my brain somehow chases two different things and they're contrasting, they're very different. That's why they're put in different buckets, different parts of my thinking. And then just so I realized, oh no, the reason why I'm thinking about those two things at the same time is because they actually won. The contrast between them is what gets me excited. And this one in particular, it combines martial arts and artificial intelligence. I mean, artificial intelligence is a short way of saying artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, brain implants is a whole group, a whole pack of technologies that are world changing. They're happening right now as we speak. They're being tested, they're being developed, they're being fine tuned in companies around the country, around the world, honestly, and a lot of that in the Bay Area. And they're experimenting with these things, and they will transform the world. And for that story I needed someone that had no contact with technology whatsoever, someone that had a completely different life. Like, what kind of person I would bring to this? And I was working on another story that was about a martial artist that had always been inspired by how she grew up in China and listening to legends of how kung fu styles have been born and created out of watching animals fight. And it's like, what happens if we create a style that comes from animals that work in large groups like ants or bees? Because when I was a kid, I was obsessed with ants and bees. So I always and I was always fighting and doing kung fu as well. So though that question is a childhood question. Like, what is that? So when I was working on those two stores, I would kind of switch from one to the other. And one day I realized, you know what? They're the same because if we could take these brain implants and put in multiple fighters, they could fight as one the same way that ants and bees fight. So that's finally a way to create an ant or a bee style kung fu. And then okay, I have the story. So I want to write this because I want to read it, and then it happens. So I don't write stories based on any specific plot that I want to do or any opportunity I see in the world. I write the stories that I'm desperate to read and no one is writing, so I go there and write myself.
That's very cool. That's very interesting. And I love how, because I have read your book, and now you saying this makes so much sense the way you think about, having two very different things and combining it together. Because throughout your book, it seems a little bit chaotic and crazy, the writing style, because you have Claudia and you have like the meditating and the fighting and the Eastern mentality, and then you have the Western technology and everything going on there. So it seems like two different things, but as you read and progress through the book, you realize they are the same. And now that you're saying this out loud, I fully understand what you were thinking and
You
how
think
it's
of
come to progress.
If you think of the trying to not to give too many spoilers here, but there's the contrast the other way around as well. It's like the Claudia was raised under Taoist philosophy, right? So and a lot of that has to do with balancing the yin and the yang energies, the hard and the soft, but it's also about letting go and let the universe play its role and drive you, right? So is a philosophy of trying to drop your goals and drop your objectives and drop control overall. And as I was doing my research, I went to an MIT event in San Francisco once, and they were talking about AI. It was like 7 years ago. Imagine, and no one's talking. It wasn't a big conversation at that point. It was the beginning of it. The technology world was getting really excited about that, but not mainstream audience. But they were talking about how if you want to understand artificial intelligence, you need to understand first that it's not a technology that is programmed to follow a set of instructions like an algorithm. You have to think about this as a technology that learns to learn. And the way it learns is by given an objective, and you reward the system every time it gets closer to the objective. So the entire AI process and the philosophy behind artificial intelligence and those creatures, if you can call them creatures, uh, is is really chasing an objective. So I was writing a story that was about letting go of your objectives, and the other one about chasing, really being really focusedly chasing your objectives. Like, okay, those things are the same. Oh, they're just the opposites of each other. They complement and they work together, and they deserve to be a story. And that's how it began. And to your point about the style as well. The first draft of it was actually pretty calm, and I try to write in a very Taoist style and very almost fable like. It's like those wise sage, a sage man telling a story. I thought, but it did not work because I also wanted to bring the reader to the mind of a fighter, not the mind of the master, not the mind of the computer. I wanted that the main character is the fighter. I wanted people to understand how it is to be inside of a fight, and I wanted them to leave that chaos. So I had to rewrite the entire book on the second draft to make it first person and make and really let people feel that chaos around you, the chaos of a fight, but also the chaos of dealing with these incredibly powerful technologies that are right around us. They're going to change everything, and we have very little control over them. Even if you're the creator of them, you have very little control over them.
Oh yeah, as writers, you have this idea of your character and your story in your head, and you can plot it out to perfection. But as you're writing, they do kind of have a life of their own. You're bringing a character into the world that sort of already exists. You're just bringing to light what they already are, and whatever you have planned for them might change as you're writing. And I think it's very interesting that you completely switched from your first draft to your second draft. It's sounding like it's essentially a whole different book when you wrote the second draft.
Yeah, it was a complete, but I'm fine with that because the first draft is usually horrible. I just try to get 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 that out of my head as quickly as possible and roughly as I can, so I can finally start to write. The first one is just getting that out of my mind, so I don't have the agony of forgetting things, because that's how it's like. I'm gonna forget this if I have to write them down. And now it's all here in one file. I can go back to it anytime. I can relax and start to write. And usually from the first to second draft, I don't edit the file. I print it and I type it again. So this time I had to do it. It's just like, okay, I'll do it. No problem whatsoever. But the option to embrace that chaos was a difficult one, because I knew that was going to cause some trouble. I knew that some people are not going to feel very comfortable, because it's not a comfortable story. The protagonist is not comfortable with what's happening in her life whatsoever. She's going through kind of her I think that's kind of clear in the very first chapter, but her conscious jumps to the present and the past, and she doesn't understand what's going on. It takes a while for her to finally realize what's going on, and us as readers, we go with her because we are inside of her head. So everything happens inside of her head, including these back and forth in time and space and time. So that makes the read very, very chaotic and agonizing at some points, but that's on purpose because that's her state of mind and her spirit, and that's what I wanted to portray because it's the chaos of fighting and the chaos of technology right now.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Reading your book, I didn't know what to expect going in, and it did feel very disorienting, but it was made clear from the very first chapter that it's disorienting because the main character is disoriented. She has these like incredibly painful headaches. She has the past and the present going on. She's still struggling with herself and like fitting into this new life in the West, and there is so much chaos happening, and that's very clear in the writing style. And I think it's really an innovative technique. And I am so happy that, I've started seeing reviews come in, and I'm so happy that most readers seem to really get that and understand it. And while they might feel disoriented, they love it. And I think it's truly incredible the way you've written this book. I've never read a book quite like this one. So I do want to wrap back around to the AI topic, which is, a big topic in our book community with authors right now. So you started this about 10 years ago, 7 years ago,
It was
when you heard,
8 years ago, I
yeah,
think.
so you were kind of like ahead of the game because most of us had no idea what AI was or even a thing 7 years ago. It's pretty new for us. But you knew about it and you went through the technology route. But now, as doing your marketing, you're doing the creative AI stuff. So can you tell us a little bit more about, your thoughts about AI with technology, with creativity, and the way it's going?
So I am trying not to form an opinion about this because I think that even as a writer, I should not have an opinion about it. I need to, at least that's my thought process. If I form a strong opinion about it as the villain of our world or the savior of our world, I think that the book would get boring and flat. So I wanted to let it play without my judgment. But I needed to get close enough to understand from an experiential standpoint how does how do these beasts think and how do they operate? How do they do their things? And thankfully, as I was going, kind of moving towards the last few rounds, because I think on this book, because English is not my first language, I did about 18 to 20 different drafts, like full rewrites. I mean, really
Wow.
deep stuff. But when I was going like after on the second half of it, I was already kind of playing with AI, with generative AI, this creative side of AI, and that's when I actually had a chance to interact with it instead of just reading about it, and that changes how you perceive the future. It gives you a glimpse of what the world is going to be, and I'll tell you this: if you're trying to understand what artificial intelligence is and how the world is going to be with it, reading it, my book or anyone's book or research or anything is going to give us like a level two of understanding. If you really put yourself into it, you're going to give you level two of a sense of what that could be. If you play with it, you experience it, you try to accomplish something with it, it gives you to level 5, right? Then the scientists can get to level 8, and then no one gets 10. But when you get to 5, you already realize that the scale is not of 1 to 10, is actually 1 to 100. This is worse than being behind science, is being in front of a change, such an elemental change in everything. Is one component that is a component of everything that is going to have so many layers on top of each other that I'll say best way that I have to explain is that right now when you see our experience seeing AI for the first time, whether if it's playing with ChatGPT or trying an image with Midjourney or using a headphone that cleans the sound and eliminates the sound. All those things are artificial intelligence, right? Our experience with that is the equivalent of the experience of a caveman that just realized that he can carry fire on the end of a stick. That caveman still has no sense that the moment that that fire gets all, that fire is going to eat the entire stick, is going to burn his hand. Has no idea that that fire, if he drops it on dry leaves, is going to burn everything. That fire eventually is going to melt rocks, and he's going to be able to build caves and stack caves on top of caves, and he's going to build giant tribes in sizes that he cannot even imagine. The level of the compounding consequences of what we are seeing are unimaginable right now. So I think that's what I've realized. We are trying to understand what level 10 of the scale is, and then all we can realize is that this is a scale of 100. We are not going to be able to see it, but playing with it is actually a great way to do it. So I use the marketing of the book as a way to experiment with that, and to live and interact with these creatures in a sense. But I made a deal with myself that I'll play with artificial intelligence as much as I could, as long as it didn't cross one line that is the book itself. So the book, the writing, the words and the ideas, there's nothing AI related. The marketing of the book, the cover design, I use a lot AI on a lot of things, but not the book itself.
Okay. Very interesting. And I like that you do have that clear line for yourself of, I'm going to write the book myself, completely create it and produce it myself, and then have marketing be the AI, which I think a lot of authors nowadays are starting to realize that is also their line, is that book production is one thing and then marketing is another thing. So I think there's a lot of people thinking the same way that you do. And I do want to step into a little bit of, your previous books and also this book. So you have been an author before, you were an author in Brazil. Is there a difference between publishing in Brazil and publishing here in the States?
It's very different. In Brazil, you have I had an agent in Brazil, but you don't need an agent necessarily to, at least 10 years ago when I published there, my first book. So I got an agent after I sold the book because I wanted someone to negotiate for me, and then she stayed with me for as long as I was publishing there. But I didn't need one, When I got here, I realized that I was actually a very important thing. So I spent a lot of time looking for agents, and even kind of had some good conversations with some. But in the end, ironically, I ended up kind of making a deal without an agent because I think my book was so particular, because it's not a story that follows a genre. So it's hard to find a big publisher that is an editor in particular that publishes that kind of book. So if everyone feel like, yeah, I like it, but it doesn't belong here because it's a book that
No one
doesn't
knows what to do
belong
with it.
anywhere, right? And for let me do some digging myself, and I started to look, and I found these publisher that I knew because of my martial arts background, because it's kind of publisher a lot of very important martial arts book, including all the Bruce Lee's original books. And I would kind of check on them and find they're specialized. They're not just a martial arts publisher, but they specialize in Asian stories brought to America and got brought to the West in general. I felt like, oh, that's actually great for me because it brings credibility, it brings a perspective that I need from my editor to have. So I reached out to him and said, I think I have a story for you. And I kind of sent them the book, and they said, yeah, this is the perfect story for us. And then that was it. So I think that even my process was there. I reached out to probably 50 different agents.
Wow.
And finally got to a few that got it, and got to one that I liked it, but then she wasn't kind of finding the right between her contacts, kind of very high level agents. She wasn't finding the right house, and then I felt like, yeah, no, it's okay. Then she just went with part ways, and I ended up finding one, but it was a coincidence. But I don't know exactly how it worked, but but I bet that is not the traditional process either. I'm just too stubborn to let go.
That is certainly not the traditional process, but I love the idea, and I love that you took action to get your book out there into the hands of publishing houses and agents, and you were being picky about who was going to accept your book. You didn't want to just give it to anybody because, if you gave it to the wrong house, the wrong editor, they could really, do something different with your book. And I like that you waited for the right opportunity. And then just like going in line with your book, because I do believe like the universe is here for us, and I do have a little bit of spirituality. It sounds like the universe put you in the exact right spot at the exact right time.
I agree with that, and honestly, it was more luck than principle. I think that if I had gotten, if there are a couple publishers there that I really wanted to work with, and if they had called and said yes, let's do it, I would have done, and they would have tried to butcher the book, probably to fit into a kind of clear genre, to fit into a less chaotic narrative and everything, and I would have missed the opportunity to find, like, to actually work with the perfect publisher. I couldn't have found a better one. The Taoists, which is some of the Taoists from China, they have this expression that shows up in the book all the time. It's called Wu Wei. That is, let the universe play its role. Let the Tao be and do its thing. And I think that I was, for as long as I was trying to force the Tao into what I was thinking, I wasn't being successful, and I was going the wrong direction. The moment I relaxed, I thought, oh, so let me see what's out there. And I found all the keywords had been in my head the entire time. All I did is like, I need to find a publisher that likes these things and combines these things. So I'm like, oh, I read many books from them, and I just didn't know that they published fiction. And I looked at they did and reached out and said, yeah, of course, this is the perfect book for us. And it was done.
I think that's incredible. And so I don't want to make this a whole discussion on like spirituality or anything, but I do think a lot of authors could sort of learn from the idea of gaining control by giving up control, which is something, that you've done. I'm working on it. It's easier said than done. But do you have any tips for authors who, might be struggling with their writing or their book and could find a bit of help by releasing control of, their life in order to gain what they're looking for?
When we were working with on the marketing of the book, I was talking to an advertising, like a friend that is a brilliant advertising strategist, and she was, I asked her, so you read the book, so what do you think this book is about? And she told me that this book is about the idea that control is an illusion. And I thought, oh, that's pretty interesting. And kind of the fact that she was telling me that was fascinating. It's like, yeah, that's a very Taoist way of looking at the world. That's the essence of what the story is, and that was the essence of my experience trying to publish that as well. These idea that you have control, that you may have control. It's an illusion. You don't have control if you're doing all by yourself. You don't have control if you're doing that through a publisher. Control doesn't exist. It's just give up. That's a waste of your time to try to control it. Just look at what you want to do, look at what feels right, and go with the flow.
Go with the flow. I like that advice. I'm going to put it in the caption to just say, go with the flow. So do you have any other tips, especially marketing wise, because I consider you like a great marketing guru. I see all the work that you do with your company. I'm following a bunch of people, and I see the incredible like advertisements that you guys are making. So, of course, small, new independent authors aren't really able to do sub advertising on such a large scale. But do you have any tips for authors on how to get into the mindset of marketing their book if they don't have, that sort of background?
I think I can help a little bit there. I would say that the biggest mistake I see my friends who are independent authors and even some big publishers doing, to be honest, is that when it comes to creating the stuff now it's because of these generative AI tools. It's so easy to build trailers and build uh interpretation of what your book is, that now everyone wants to build a trailer. And the number one mistake I see is that they they use these trailers to try to explain what the book or what the story is or who the characters are.
Hmm.
But pause for a second. Bring your mind to that theater when you were a teenager, and theaters were the coolest things in the planet. You go there to watch a movie, and you're watching the trailer of a movie that you had been waiting for a long time, and you watch the trailer, and then 2 months later you go watch the movie. You didn't know what was going to happen in the movie. The trailer messed up with your head on purpose. It did not want to do. So the trailer never explained it. Quite the opposite. It almost misled you, almost made you believe that the book was kind of, it can tell you the general vibe of the thing, the big scenes, the big the big the fun in the games. If you're doing a trailer for your book, it's the same thing. It's the same process of doing a trailer for a movie. You take parts from different, take scenes, important scenes that you think are very visual from different parts of the book, shake them, put in different order, cut them in slices that you cannot really understand what's going on, and show the vibe and show the feeling of the pursuit and the drama or the conflict that you have in the book, not the story, not the character. Because you want people to get curious, who want to know more, not to understand. People don't read a book or watch a movie or watch it because they understand what this is about. They watch it because they can't not do it. You know, this the triple denial. So it's impossible for them to say, I'm fine. No. So I've seen this. Now I have to. I have no choice. At least 3 episodes of this series, at least sitting down and watching the first 40 minutes, I will. At least the first 4 or 5 chapters of this book, I'm going to read and see where does it go. You know, and I think the trailer does that job.
Yeah, that's great advice. And, thinking about it now, watching all of your trailers, I don't think any of them actually explain anything about the book. It explains, the vibe, the aesthetic, the chaos of the book without actually telling you much about the characters, about the plot, about what's happening, or about what happens in the end. It is the vibe. And I think that's why people, especially me, love it so much, because it's so intriguing and a little bit mysterious.
Yeah, if you think of just do that when you have a chance. Just kind of go to YouTube and look for the trailers for Dune or for Star Wars, or go watch a trailer of a movie that you watched and you know every line already. And you go watch a trailer for it. Doesn't tell you a modern trailer. It doesn't tell you actually. It makes you believe that the movie is something completely different than what it really was. And it's so funny to do it. It kind of feels, it's like it gives you a sense of mischief. Like, yeah, I'm doing something very wrong here.
A little mischievous to create a trailer that doesn't tell you anything about what the book is actually about. Do you have any more tips and advice for new and independent authors who, have published a book recently or about to publish a book that, can help them with their marketing or their writing or even getting a publisher?
I think that this is, you have to understand that books are a long-term journey. If you try to rush it, you're going to mess it up. And I compare that, I was talking to my jiu-jitsu instructor yesterday, and he said, how long did it take for you to write this book? Like 8 years. And I could see in his face, like, 8 years. So this is almost the time that it takes. It's a lot. Yes, writing a book, some people can do it in a year or two. Some people do it in 5 or 10. But it is a long journey. You have to be ready for a long journey. You shouldn't try to rush it too much, because there's the research, there's the writing, and then there's the rewriting, and then there's the rewriting, and then there's the rewriting, and then you sell it, and then there's a lot more rewriting to do. And you have to be emotionally prepared for that. And because that's what it takes. If I had I could have felt that, all right, I wrote the story once, and I think that, it could be pretty cool to write it again in first person because it's going to bring more of the chaos. But I've done it already. I wrote all the way to the end. I'm just going to fine tune the copy, and that's going to be it. I wouldn't have had a book that I was so proud of. And I'm proud of it because it's a story that I actually want to tell. I was proud of that before anyone read. Some people love the style. Some people hate the style. And I'm fine with both. because I know that that's the story that I really wanted to tell. If you feel that proud for this, because that's what you wanted to do and you achieve that, then what others say will not hurt you that much. They will hurt you a little or a lot, but a lot is still more than kill you. You
That's
know?
true. Yeah, the opinions of other people, while it might hurt your soul a little bit, it's still your story, and I'm so glad that you're proud of it. I'm proud of it. I think it's an incredible story that everyone should check out immediately. PJ, thank you so much for sharing your writing inspiration, for sharing these tips, and for sharing your voice and your story with the world. If you haven't read this book yet, you need to read it immediately. It is innovative, it's amazing and incredible, and I can't say enough good things about it. PJ, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Happy reading, guys. Bye bye.